Chapter 9. Two Washington, D.C. weddings. The prospective bride and groom set a photography date for their engagement photos. At last I knew I would have that engagement picture for the frame under the bed in my prayer room. Joel said the sun was shining on that date with lovely Indian summer backgrounds. I waited to see the results on Facebook. He had no idea why I took such an interest in this photo shooting. There was another wedding in D.C. coming up in October. My niece Karen, Judy's daughter, had invited me before the stroke to her wedding there. When I returned home, I saw her RSVP card still sitting on my table. I had missed the deadline, but she understood. If I were able to attend her wedding, I knew I would be up to going to Joel's 2 months later. Road trips were uncomfortable on my sore head, especially the braking and accelerating when sitting upright. I would just suck it up and go. My 2 younger brothers and their wives planned to be there. May I attend those 2 weddings in D.C.? I asked my new brain surgeon in Raleigh. You can, he answered. That's all I needed to hear. He was my follow-up doctor who did a brief checkup and told me that I was not supposed to be doing so well. A lot of people are praying for me, I explained. He told me to come back in 5 years. That sounded like a plan to me. He also told me that 50% of folks who have what I had don't survive. He never sees them. It was humbling to be in the other 50%. The UAB specialist had recommended Dr. Ali Somarodi, a Duke Raleigh brain surgeon, but his partner, the man talking to me, had an earlier opening, so we scheduled with him. Alan and I went to their website and watched lecture videos on aneurysms and an actual brain operation to install clips to check breathing. Oh dear, is that what they did to me? It seemed to be working, and I could still sing my song after all the clipping. I did fine on the first trip to D.C. by sleeping horizontally in the back seat with my pillow. Alan's steady arm was all I needed to walk around, even downstairs or down the street. The date was exactly 3 months since the surgery, July 17th to October 17th. The wedding was beautiful as we watched the starry-eyed bride and groom commit their lives to each other. And who officiated the wedding? Joel Gravely. That was another incentive to attend and to do my therapy exercises so I could be there for my niece and my sister's family, and also to see my son perform his first wedding ceremony. The day of his cousin's wedding was the day that Joel found out that he had been hired as worship leader of a local church. The Lord always comes through. Pratty has some job searches ahead, but she became a busy lady since her parents had arrived in New Jersey from India that weekend. Pratty's mom did not speak English as well as Pratty. This was her first experience at being the mother of the bride and attending an American wedding. She had to depend a great deal on Joel and Pratty to make the wedding happen. Pratty had to depend on Joel since he knew so many people and places in the D.C. area where the wedding was scheduled to happen. Her apartment was in New Jersey, and I, the mother of the groom, was not much help since I was recuperating from a brain hemorrhage. Sharon said that she would be glad to serve Joel as wedding director and advisor. I knew he would be in good hands with her. Aunt Judy's offer of all her leftover wedding decorations were good news to Joel and Pratty. They accepted. Cousin Karen was very helpful as a consultant to Joel. She was now a wedding expert compared to him. She seemed to sail through her own wedding experience so gracefully. I pulled back from some leadership roles at my church to devote myself to recovery and taking extra special care of Alan. He needed better food than canned soup, pizzas, and pot pies. My old blue apron came out of the drawer again. Then I got an assignment to keep me busy and challenged. Joel wanted a nostalgic PowerPoint of Pratty and himself to be looping behind the head table during their wedding reception. Joel volunteered me for the project since I had more time than others and had done one for Allison's wedding. I had several photos to work with since I had access to Joel's baby book, family photos, their Facebook photos, and their engagement photos. Joel requested a song from Fiddler on the Roof for background audio, Wonder of Wonders, Miracle of Miracles. He had once performed that song with the Shelton State Community College singers. I wasn't techy enough to insert the audio, but I did put the lyrics alongside the photos. The final slide was one of their hands with the words, Miracle of Miracles, God has given you to me. It was a miracle, not of modern technology and dating searches, but of God's goodness. One night in October, Alan came home from doing his usual Monday night evangelism explosion outreach with Colonial Baptist Church. He gave me a beautiful card my friends there had purchased and signed with loving expressions of concern for my recovery. Since I was already in bed without my glasses, I listened as he read each one to me. The next day, I read them for myself and decided that I would attend the following week. None of that group of friends seemed to know about my stroke until Alan returned for the fall semester without me. They were shocked. 2 of them later became my Facebook friends so that we can communicate better. By the end of October, Joel had rented the apartment that would be the first home as a married man. One text from his phone was a selfie of Pratty and himself with the captions, On a date with the Indian princess. The reality of this future marriage was starting to sink in for all of us. Even more when those wedding registry gifts started appearing at our door when the FedEx or UPS trucks came by. Since the couple was in transition, they were using our address for the destination of things their friends were ordering from their bridal registry. The pile of boxes grew in a guest room. October also marked a turning point in my recovery. I began to devour an old book on healing by F. Bosworth, Christ the Healer. With the skill of a lawyer, Bosworth explained that healing is in the atonement and that all of us qualify for healing if we have not finished our allotted time on earth. As I meditated and believed the wonderful verses he provided, I actually began to feel 100% better than before. Probably I had mistakenly thought that maybe a miracle of healing could occur if I happened to be watching the 700 Club on the right day or attended a special healing meeting. But Bosworth was telling me simply to anchor my faith in the promises already made in that grand book of the centuries, God's Bible. It really worked. I was tired of not feeling good. Gratitude filled me for just still being alive to contribute to God's kingdom. I was able to join the Colonial EE team for the last part of the fall semester. I felt well enough to tackle a big challenge. Alan and I decided that our only recourse in publishing his master's thesis would be to type it ourselves in a Word document. It had been done on an electric typewriter about 35 years earlier. A friend tried to scan it into a Word document for publication, but it did not work. Since I had some time available, I volunteered to take on the task, all 43,000 words. Since we had already used CreateSpace, they said we could publish it for free with them if we did our own formatting. One incentive for completing the thesis project was a remark made at a banquet in November. Alan and I attended the annual Friends of the Library banquet at Campbell University in our county. Alan had always said he would like to retire near a little red brick college so that he could use its library. Voila. We found it, just 8 miles away. Campbell is a Baptist university with beautiful red brick paved walkways and buildings. The Pulitzer Prize winning author Paul Green attended the school when it was just an academy. The library's stacked sections is a gold mine of wonderful missionary biographies. I've used several of them for my blog biographies. Since we are not enrolled as students there, we simply had to join Friends of the Library with an annual donation to have access to everything in the library: books, videos, magazines, Starbucks coffee, academic environments, etc. We also made some excellent friends from the library staff. One of those friends was the library dean herself. I told her one day about our book ventures and asked if there was a publication, bulletin board, or somewhere that could highlight our books. She offered to include a blurb about them in the fall newsletter and also let us set up a table in the corner for display before and after the annual banquet of Friends of the Library. All that communication took place before the detour, my stroke. But since I was feeling up to it, Alan and I began to get excited about the banquet. I did a printout display and bookmarkers for the occasion and provided some information for the publication editor. Then the dean emailed me one day to ask one of us to offer the invocation at the meal. I volunteered Alan. He said okay. After setting up our book table at the banquet, we noticed that we had been assigned to sit at the head table with the dean and her husband, 2 officers of the Friends group, and the guest speaker, a former justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, Justice Willard Richard. We felt very honored. The 2 officers were on the history faculty at Campbell. One of them had once considered Alabama for his graduate degree. Alan was in his element since he had plowed through graduate school in history. One of the history professors remarked that he would like to have the thesis book when it became available. There was a sample copy marked coming soon. We needed to get busy on that project. Thankfully, I could still type. My gratitude for stroke survival spilled over one night in an EE outreach in November. Our team knocked on the door of a college student. She was a Hindu originally from India. I told her about Pratty and was so sorry that Alan had borrowed my phone so that I couldn't show off my future daughter-in-law. The student had time to listen to the gospel, so I shared the story of Jesus with her. I heard myself blurt out, "I had a stroke in July. I'm so glad I can talk so that I can share this wonderful story with you." Later, I descended the steps from her apartment to the car and realized that not only did I still have my speech faculties, I had climbed steps to the 2nd floor of the apartment building without a walker or a cane. The student was not ready to commit to the Christian faith, but it was also new. But we did leave some seeds behind, and I hope she felt the love of the team that brought us out on a cold night to stop at her door. Alan shared my love for the Evangelism Explosion EE program. For 6 years, we had regretted that our local churches had not bought into the concept, and we had traveled over 40 miles round trip to participate in another church. He continually did little commercials for EE when he was around friends. One day, he heard what sounded like music to our ears. An elder said, "I'd like to see this at our church." The pastor said, "I would be willing to fire that bullet." That was all Alan needed to hear. He began recruiting a small interest group for EE. The church staff wanted to implement small groups patterned after the ones at Church of the Highlands in Birmingham, Alabama. EE could be one of those small groups to begin when the church launched all of them in the spring semester. Wow.